make sure that I have everybody. So we have the Mileses. Excellent. We have the Rahis.
Yes.
Great. The Alis. Yeah. We have the McLeans. And the Eugene.
Yes.
Excellent. My name is Haley. I'm going to be taking you on our nature walk today. We are going to be heading down around the ponds that you probably... Can anybody tell me what plant this is?
Lilac?
Lavender. Good job. So it is still open. You can give it a sniff. It is actually kind of soft too. So lavender, as many people know, does have a few medicinal properties to it. It is used for relaxation and calming. So a lot of lavender scented things are used to help people calm down so that they can sleep. But it does also have a couple other medicinal properties. It's an antiseptic and an anti-inflammatory. So anybody tell me what kind of tree this is? Pine tree? Do you know what kind of pine tree it is? Next step. So this is a white pine tree. You can tell that. You would be able to tell it if you could see the bark. It's got more of a white tone to it if you use it for furniture. White pine trees are also historically used for ship masts because they typically grow very tall and they're very...
We are enjoying the trail walk.
Yeah,
My BFF Laura.
It was dropped here by glaciers. But how would I know that? So, rock, sedimentary rock, when it forms, it's layers of the earth that have been compressed over time. So naturally, the layers in rock run horizontally because it's layers of the earth compressing. But you can see the layers in this rock are running vertically. And this piece of rock is too big for us to have moved, which indicates that it was dropped here by glaciers during the last ice age, so like a couple million years ago. And then it was left here over time. A lot of the work that was done to create this resort, we kind of worked around what was here rather than like plowing through, flattening everything and building from the start. So that's why the hotel is kind of built into the hill so that we didn't like level it all out. Makes it a little harder to get around, but it is far more beautiful and natural. This rock is granite, which is a lot of the rock that's around the resort, and it is the rock that's used on your countertops in your suites. Clear strip of granite here that you would recognize. And then the other piece of rock that's in here, there is a bit of mica, which is like a black shiny rock, and it breaks off into really, really thin layers. Mica, the tree with the holes in it.
Yeah.
Can anybody tell me what kind of animal may have made those holes? Woodpecker. Excellent. Everybody name the type of woodpecker? No. Not likely. So the type of woodpecker that we have most commonly around here is called a pileated woodpecker. It is the woodpecker that looks like Woody Woodpecker. So he's got the red cap. It's about the size of a crow, which is fairly big for a woodpecker. So that means that they grow to like 1.5 to 2 feet tall. So that's a big bird. Woodpeckers, particularly pileated woodpeckers, they peck holes in the trees to collect the bugs because that's what they eat. But they do also peck the holes to create nests. All right, so welcome to our adventure park. In the summer, this is used for A, zip lining, and B, arboreal tree climbs. So they have like rock climb holds that they kind of attach to the tree and you climb up. But nature-wise, what we're going to talk about right here is these trees are
Red pine.
red pine, yes. So another variety of pine tree. You can obviously tell just by looking at it, it looks quite different than the white pine in the way that it grows. So red pine trees, their branches are all the way at the top. I don't know 100% the reason for that. I think it's the bottom branches like kind of break off as they mature. But obviously we can't just like reach out and touch these ones. You can see they're all over the ground. These pine needles for red pine trees are far longer and thicker than white pine needles. So they're a little less soft, but they are the red pine trees are the predominantly used tree for telephone poles because they are very strong wood, and obviously they look exactly like telephone poles right now. Another way you can tell is a red pine because you can tell us because of the pine trees. So the needles have a certain amount of acidity in them, and when they fall, they change the pH level in the soil. So most other plants physically cannot grow around pine trees. So a lot of the time when you see like a pine forest, this is really all that's in there because they change the acidity of the soil, so other plants just naturally can't. Sugar maples around here, I don't know their exact location right here. You can tap any kind of maple tree to get sap, but sugar maples have like the highest, like they're the sweetest, so they'll make the actual syrup that you're used to tasting. Syrup has been used, or sap has been used for years. The Native Americans did also use sap as both a sweetener and as something to make tea with. And then the way that we've consumed sap has really changed over the years. The ratio of sap to syrup is that you need 40 liters of tree sap to make 1 liter of maple syrup, because we boil it down so much to get the right like sugar content and the consistency of it that we're used to eating. So it takes a lot of sap to make all of the maple syrup that the world consumes, and Canada provides 80% of the world's supply of maple syrup. So you can imagine how much sap we collect every year. No, obviously not us, but Canada as a whole. So we do tap a couple trees in the spring, and we do a bit of a maple syrup experience. You know, like the syrup on the snow makes good taffy. But yeah, we do. It is a very, very large industry in Canada, and the trees are what gives us syrup. So we're gonna head into the Five Bridges area.
All the plastic.
Oh my God.
That's
Milkweed. These are milkweed. Look.
This is milkweed. It is what monarch butterflies eat.
Yeah, monarch
Are
butterfly
around
eats this.
for a while, so
Oh,
it's
there.
not looking the freshest. But yeah, that is what this is. So milkweed is the predominant food of monarch butterflies, and also a very weird alien-looking plant. Snapping angry turtles that live in. Right now, they're hibernating. We're getting ready to. So they. Pardon? Crabs? No, it's a little cold for crabs. So the turtles bury into the mud for the winter. And then, like I said, we do have black bears. We have raspberry bushes around the Five Bridges area that are very attractive to black bears, and raspberry bushes are pretty prominent in the woods around here as well. We don't really have many here. Most of them have
Oh, the monarch butterfly.
It's not dead. It is.
It is dead. Yeah. Look at the trunk. It's so
this
big.
is another white pine tree. And we're going to talk a little bit about logging. So a lot of people know, obviously, that logging was a huge industry in Canada when all of this land was originally being developed. And white pine trees were a very, very popular tree to log because pine is a very strong wood. They would take white pine trees to make the ship's mast. A lot of white pines from Canada made all of the masts for the British Royal Fleet at some point in history. And because of logging, a lot of the trees that we have left in our forest, their gene pool was altered by the logging industry. So when they were choosing trees to log, obviously they wanted the nicest, tallest, straightest, widest trees. And that is why a tree like this one got left. So this tree is probably a couple hundred years old. But the reason that it got left is because you can see at the top, its trunk splits. And so the loggers wouldn't have chosen it because it's not tall enough to be a ship's mast, and it wasn't a perfect specimen. So fortunately for us, it got left. And that is what you'll see in a lot of pine forests, is that the trees there aren't perfect specimens because their gene pool got differed by the logging industry. And it was obviously, like I said, a huge industry up here. They even built a railway from Muskoka to Georgian Bay to kind of expedite logging to the Georgian Bay area. That railway does still exist, although it stopped being maintained once a bridge collapsed, and they were like, it's close enough to not being needed anymore, so we're just going to let it go. And so it is kind of like a recreational trail now, and it's used for like snowmobiling, hiking, biking, that kind of stuff. And it is dotted by ghost towns. So if you're ever interested in that, there's a railway from Georgian Bay to here, dotted by ghost towns, caused by the logging.
What do you call it? Sumac?
S-U-M-A-C. So sumac can be both a tree and a bush. They sometimes grow from one into the other. Sumac's a pretty popular, like, common plant in Toronto. So if you're driving along the highways there, you'll probably see it on the side of the road. Yep, sumac has several uses. Its berries were used by Native Americans for vitamin C content, because it is fairly high in vitamin C, so they would use it either as a powder or in tea to get some vitamin C so they wouldn't get scurvy in the winter, because the berries stay on in the winter. So it's one of the plants that does keep its fruit in winter, so it was very important to native populations to make sure that they stayed healthy throughout the year. Sumac is also a spice used in, I believe, Persian food. Yeah. Is what it's used in. I just learned that one a couple weeks ago. And then sumac is obviously eaten by birds and stuff as well. And it is a plant that retains its red color when you like boil it down or mash it up. A lot of plants lose that color, so it was used as dye for quite a while because of those properties. I would not suggest eating sumac that you just find in the wild because there is a poisonous variety of it as well. Alright, so we're going to head to Fish Rock, which is this one here, and talk a little bit about the history of the property, and then we will be finished.
All right.
So this is Fish Rock. I don't know why it's called that, so that is a piece of history that I don't know. But this piece of land was originally settled in the 1800s by a man named John Frederick Payne. He was an immigrant from Calcutta, India. Depending on different family members that you asked of his family about why he came over to Canada, they would give you different answers. So one answer was that he came for the opportunity and the land. The other was that he was a little bit of a delinquent and came over to be straightened out. So depends on who they talk to. But he and his family settled this piece of land and they built a house here. A lot of families were promised land up here as farmland, but because we're on the Canadian Shield, everything is just rock. So farming was not really an option up here. And so a lot of families moved back away and didn't settle here, but most of the families that did eventually resorted to tourism. So once the canals and locks were built between the three main lakes up here, so Lake Rosso, which is what we're on, Lake Joseph, and Lake Muskoka, tourism really increased. So the two locks, so there's a set of locks in Port Carling and a canal in Port Sandfield, and that is the connection between the two lakes. And so once those were built, steamships, including the Seg one, which I believe still runs, were used to kind of shuttle people up here. And so the Paynes decided to take advantage of that and build their house into a resort. So this was all happening in the early 1900s. So this house went through 2 world wars, went through the Depression, went through everything really. There used to be far more resorts on all of these lakes, but a lot of them have burned down over time. So those white buildings that you can see over there is Cleveland's house. They are also a very old resort. They are one of the only ones that never burned down. So Cleveland's house was a direct competitor to Clayton House, which is what they named their house. And that is why we have a wing of the hotel named Clayton House. So it's on the history of the land. And then after this burned down, the property changed hands a few times. It was originally going to be a development called Red Leaves, which is why on all of the signage around the resort there are 2 red leaves to kind of honor that past. And then it opened as the JW Marriott the Rosso Muskoka in December of 2008. So the hotel as it is, fairly new. And they took precautions when they were building because obviously a lot of people who live in Muskoka are very protective of the land, which is excellent. So when they were building it, like I mentioned earlier, they kind of did what they could to build into the land. That's why the hotel only has 4 floors, so that it wasn't towering up over everything, and that it's hard to see from the road. You can see from the lake. So thank you so much for
We learned a lot.
I am going to technically leave you here, but I'm going to be heading back.